Welcome to another tutorial video. As you can see, we're going to be covering something called the flow of funds schedule here, which is directly relevant to cap tables for venture capital-backed startups and some of our previous coverage of that topic. So for all the files and resources here, you'll want to go to our flow of funds page within our venture capital section of the site, and I'll pin this comment below the video as the first one there so you can click through and get to it there. And as with the rest of these topics, this is a shorter excerpt from our full venture capital and growth equity modeling course. Now, flow of funds in finance can refer to dozens of different concepts, from macro drivers to the amount of money coming into and going out of investment funds or banks or things like that. But here we're going to focus on the type that tells you the proceeds to different investor groups in M&A deals. So in a standard flow of funds schedule, you will have something about the company's exit value or potential exit value. You'll have information about the cap table, the shares owned by each investor group, the employees, the executives and founders, and so on. And then special terms like liquidation preferences, participating preferred, and so on. You will then analyze each possible set of conversion decisions that this group makes, and then you will go through the math, come up with this waterfall schedule where you determine the proceeds to each group under each different set of decisions. And then at the end, you will pick the decision that maximizes the proceeds to the VC investors. And this is what the flow of funds schedule tells you. You can then create some summary information based on the amounts that go to each group, the multiples of invested capital, and you can also create a sensitivity table based on that. So in this lesson, I will start by giving you the short version. We'll go into the cap table data, the exit price and conversion combinations. Then we'll talk about the liquidation preferences, the participating preferred formulas and logic. We'll look at the common share counts and options, and then go through the net proceeds and multiples. And for most of this, I'm going to just stick to Excel because I think it's a little bit pointless to go back and forth between Excel and slides here because you just really need to see the formulas for most of this. So let's start with the short version. This schedule tells you how much goes to each different VC investor group, the employees, and the founders in an M&A deal. It also tells you whether each group should convert their preferred shares into common, exercise their options, and so on. And a lot of this depends on what other groups are doing in the deal, which makes it tricky. So it's not quite as simple as just saying that one group can act independently, because what the VC investors do could potentially affect what the employees do with exercising or not exercising their options. This is mostly relevant for M&A deals because if a company goes public instead of selling, normally all the preferred shares get converted into common shares. So these types of special terms, liquidation preferences, and so on simply do not apply in an IPO. If you only have one or two investor groups, you can write some simple formulas to do all this, but if you start getting more groups or more special terms attached, it becomes quite unwieldy. So in one of the cap table examples here in this channel, for example, we looked at this case where there are just seed investors and Series A investors, and we can use min-max functions to determine what the Series A investors should do, and then we expanded a little bit to determine what the seed investors should do, and we didn't need to come up with a whole schedule or simulation for this, but there were only two investor groups here. Once it gets more complicated than that, and you have 3 or 4 or 5 groups, they have special terms attached, you have an employee option pool, you have founders or executives with different terms, then it becomes much more essential to sort of run a simulation and to look at all the possibilities and then pick the one that is best. So let's go into each part of this now. I will go back to the Excel file and start with a blank version of this, and we'll go through it and I'll explain the formulas along the way. Going through this from top to bottom, our typical starting point in a flow of funds analysis is the exit price for the company. This is normally based on a multiple of revenue or EBITDA or some other similar financial metric. So we're saying $400 million in revenue and a 4x revenue exit multiple here. So the exit enterprise value is $1.6 billion. We subtract the net debt to get to the exit equity value. And this is important because these are the proceeds that are actually available to go to the shareholders, the VC investors, the employees, and the founders here. Now, the next point is that we need a cap table with the shares that each group owns, their ownership, what the exit value is, if they all convert into common shares, and then any other special terms attached, and that's already up here. And then to actually set up the flow of funds, we need to look at different combinations. So for example, what if the Series C investors stay in preferred, and the Series B investors do, and the seed and Series A investors also stay in preferred stock? That's one possibility, but then another possibility is that the first two stay in preferred stock, but the seed and Series A investors convert. And then a third possibility is that the Series C investors stay in preferred, but the Series B investors convert, and the seed and Series A investors stay in preferred. And you keep going like that all the way across. Now, I'm not going to type out every single combination here, but I'm just going to paste this in from off screen so you can see all the combinations and decision sets laid out like that. Now, once you have this, you want to start by linking in the upfront equity purchase price. It says purchase price here because this is from the perspective of the acquirer in this deal. So let's link to the 1.2 billion and I will anchor this. I will ignore the additional proceeds from option exercise for right now, and I will just add up the proceeds to the equity investors right here. And now we have to start thinking about the liquidation preferences. We're going to look at the conversion decision. So the Series C investors here, we're saying stay in preferred stock in this particular column. So if this equals 0, it means that they're going to stay in preferred and collect their liquidation preference. So I'm going to take the minimum between our proceeds to equity investors and then their liquidation preference right up here, which is 400 million. And we have that. I should also put a negative sign in front of this. And then for the rest of these, we can largely do the same thing. So in each level, we're going to take the proceeds to the equity investors and subtract whatever we distributed in the form of this liquidation preference. And if we go down like this, we can go down and just sort of modify these to reference the Series B investors instead. And let's go up and change this to cell E21. And we have this, and then let's do it for the seed and Series A investors right here. So E29, and then E37, and then E19, so we're referencing their liquidation preference. We're not really making a decision for them because we're assuming that everyone here stays in preferred stock. And we just want to see how this plays out. We want to see what the numbers look like with this decision versus slightly different decisions after this. We'll add these up, and we get to our remaining proceeds right here. So that takes us to the next step, which is to address the participating preferred proceeds. Now, the basic idea here is pretty simple, which is that with participating preferred, it means that if the Series C investors stay in preferred stock, yes, they get their liquidation preference, but they also get a percent of the remaining proceeds at this point, which is usually linked to their ownership of the common shares, so 35% right here. So effectively they double dip, but they're limited by the participation cap as well. So they cannot earn more than $800 million in this exit no matter what happens. And that includes the liquidation preference and whatever they get from this participating preferred term. So initially, we can do something like this. We can say that if they stay in preferred stock, so if it equals 0, and they have participating preferred over here, so this equals 1, then we're going to take the ownership right here in cell G21 and then multiply by the remaining proceeds right here in cell E39. So this works, but the problem is that it does not reflect the participating cap. So for example, if I increase the revenue exit multiple to 8x right here, well, you can see the problem. The Series C investors now get about $1.2 billion from their liquidation preference and from the participating preferred. So we need to add some type of cap here instead. And the way to do that is to modify this second part and to say that if this cap actually exists, so if we have a participation cap right here, which is 800 million, then we're going to take the minimum between this cap and then the liquidation preference distributed so far, and then our normal calculation, which is the remaining proceeds times their ownership percentage. And I'm just fixing up the parentheses here. So we use this minimum function to cap it. Now, if there is no participation cap, then we just take the remaining proceeds times the 35% ownership percentage, and then we have a 0 at the end because if there is no participating preferred, there will be nothing here in general. And now you can see how this works. Now with that cap in place, they get a maximum of $800 million total, and that is how you build in participating preferred to this type of schedule. Let's now sum this up. The other thing I want to do is go back and change this to a 4x revenue multiple because we're not actually exiting the company for 8x. So I'm changing this back, and now you can see that the total proceeds here are much lower. So now we're on to the next part, which is the common equity proceeds. And to decide how these are distributed, we need to recalculate the share counts to different groups because not everyone actually has common shares upon exit. These groups with preferred shares, the VCs that stayed in preferred stock, are not going to have any common shares in the exit. So to determine this, we go up and take the conversion decision for each group, and then we multiply by their common shares outstanding right here. I'm going to anchor this for the Series C investors, and then for the Series B investors, it's a little bit confusing because these move in opposite directions, but we can just keep modifying the rows. And then we can go up and modify this and set it to row 19 instead. I'm going to leave the employee option pool blank for right now, and we'll return to this one. And then finally, for the common shareholders, this will just be a constant number right here because this never changes. So we have this, and then we can add this up. We have that. Now we need the implied price per common share, so the company's share price in the exit, because we have to determine if the employees here actually exercise their options. So specifically, we have to look at this share price and see if it is higher than the exercise price. And if it is, they will exercise their options. And if not, they will not exercise their options and they'll have no equity in this exit. So to set this up, we can go up to our remaining proceeds right here. This is essentially the amount that can go to the true common shareholders in the exit. We will then divide by the total down here. We get a very low number because the units are off. We're dealing with shares as stated, but we're dealing with dollars and millions. So I'm going to go up and multiply by 1,000,000 right here in the unit cell. We get to that, and so we get to our implied share price of $209. So clearly the employees are going to exercise their options here. Before doing that though, I also want to fill in the proceeds that go to each group. So we'll go down here and we'll take the ownership for each group in the exit. So we'll take their share count and divide by the total. I'll anchor this part, and then I will go and multiply by the remaining proceeds right here and anchor the row, copy this down, and then add this up to get our total remaining proceeds. So we have most of what we need. Now for the employee option pool, at a basic level, it's pretty simple. We're going to take the implied share price, and if this is greater than the exercise price right here in cell H22, then they are going to exercise all their options and get about 1.2 million common shares. Otherwise, we'll say 0, and we have that. Now, of course, the problem with this is that if you carry it through, you also have to reflect the fact that by exercising these options, the option holders pay the company a certain amount, and this increases the total amount that is available for distribution in this exit. So to set this up, we can take the share counts for the employees, because if there's a positive number here, it means they exercise their options. We'll multiply by the exercise price right here, and then divide by units to convert this back. And so now we have that. And you can see that at the bottom, we get this calculate message because of the circular reference. What's happening here is that the implied price per common share depends on these remaining proceeds, but these remaining proceeds also depend on the implied price per common share, because if the employees exercise their options, the proceeds are going to be higher. If they don't exercise their options, the proceeds are going to be lower because of this line in the beginning right here. And so ideally what you want to do here is to set up a check and to say that if circular references are allowed, then you can go through with this and you can do the share price check and all of that you saw before. On the other hand, if circular references are not allowed, then you just want to link to the common shares as is and assume that the employees do exercise their options. And so now, if you turn off the circular reference, you can see that the calculate message in the bottom left corner goes away because we no longer have that relationship. We no longer get a case where the exit equity proceeds depend on what the employee option holders do. For now, I'll leave this set to 1 just so you can have it for comparison purposes. And then as a final step in this process, you want to add up the exit proceeds by investor class here at the bottom. So you have to take into account the liquidation preference for each investor group and then whatever they get in terms of common equity. This is a little bit annoying because of the way this is set up, where not everything is right next to each other. Unfortunately, there isn't really a better way to do this. With the Series C investors, you also need to get their participating preferred proceeds and everything else. And then for the employee option holders, you need to take the amount that goes to them, and you also have to subtract whatever they paid to exercise their options because you're looking at the net amount right here. And then for the common shareholders, you just go up and link to their number right here with a negative, and you add this up. You can then add up the proceeds to all the VC investors right here. And then to determine the optimal decision, you have to look at this number and then compare it to the maximum. So we want to take this whole range right here through L67. And if it equals the maximum of this range, then it is the best decision. Otherwise, it's not. Here, it's a little bit silly because we only have one column filled out. But if I go in now and copy and paste this around, we'll get the actual best decision. So I've just pasted this around. And since in column 4, the proceeds to the VC investors are close to $1 billion, this is therefore the best decision. The Series C investors should stay in preferred, get their liquidation preference, and then also get their participating preferred down here. But then the Series B investors and the seed and Series A investors should both convert into common shares in this case. And so we have that. And then at the bottom, we can calculate the multiples and the percent of the exit proceeds, and we can use XLOOKUP to retrieve the appropriate amounts for each group right here. You can also create sensitivity tables after that at the bottom. And so this is how you set up a flow of funds schedule to run a very simple simulation and to see which conversion decision is best. Now, having been through all that, you might look at this and think, okay, well, that doesn't seem that complicated. Some of the formulas are a little bit tricky, but what makes the flow of funds schedule difficult or more difficult? First, there are different types of options. There could be vested, unvested, exercisable, unexercisable options, and the treatment of these varies in the deal depending on what the acquirer wants to do. Second, with the purchase price, there could be more complications. You could have earnouts, you could have escrows, you could have working capital adjustments. All these complicate the actual amount that is available for the common shareholders in the deal. The investor priority is another issue. Here, we assume that the Series C investors rank highest and then the others rank below them, but this is not necessarily true in real life. Liquidation preferences in particular often have the same rank, which is called pari passu, and then other terms like participating preferred can vary as well. If you have something like convertible bonds or safes or venture debt or venture loans, that can also complicate the math and add some additional conversion options at the end. And then finally, if you think about it, if we had 8 groups here, we'd need to create 1,024 columns because there are 2 to the 8th different combinations. At that level, we can't really do this in Excel. We'd need to use VBA or code or something else to automate the process. So something like this is really only viable if you have something like 8 columns or 16 or 32 columns. Once you go beyond that and you start getting into thousands of columns, this approach is not viable and you'll have to do something else to figure this out. That's about it for this lesson. Let's do a recap and summary. The flow of funds schedule tells you the amount of proceeds that go to each investor in an M&A exit for a VC-backed company. You examine the different conversion decisions and then you pick the best one that maximizes the total proceeds for all the VC investor groups. You start with the cap table data, the exit price, and the different combinations for all the conversion decisions. Then you plot out the exit price and the liquidation preferences first as the highest priority. In this step, you just want to ensure that if the investors stay in preferred, they get their liquidation preference, but only if the remaining proceeds can cover it. Then you address participating preferred and you reflect any caps. If participating preferred exists, you look at the remaining proceeds and multiply by the ownership percentage. But if a cap exists, you have to limit this to the cap minus the liquidation preference. Then you calculate the common share counts and you deal with options. You have to build in circular references for the options part, which is a little bit tricky. And then at the very bottom, you add up all the proceeds, you calculate the multiples, and of course you determine the optimal conversion decision, which we did right here using this max function. That's it for this lesson. Hopefully now you know a little bit more about how this works and how you can use it to expand on cap tables and actually use them to do something useful in a deal.